I have told this story only a handful of times, and each time I have told it wrong. Left out the part where I almost didn't ride down the hill, skipped the part about the boy's boots, or rushed past the 3 days, like they were nothing. They were everything, so I am going to try to tell it right. The night the creek rose, I was riding the south fence line because I could not sleep. That was the truth of most of my nights in those years after Ruth died. I would lie in the dark until the dark pressed down too hard, and then I would saddle up and ride. The ranch did not need it. I needed it. A man moving is harder to catch than a man lying still, and grief is a fast thing. It was the second week of September 1874, and the rains had been heavy for 3 days running. Redstone Creek was already swollen when I came along the ridge above it, and I was turning back toward the barn when I saw the lantern below, small and yellow, swinging, a wagon on the near bank, the team balking at the water's edge. I pulled up and watched a moment because I was not, in those years, a man who went toward trouble. The county would have told you that plainly. Cal Drennan keeps to himself. Cal Drennan does not answer his door. Cal Drennan has gone hard since he buried his wife, and hard is how he aims to stay. But the lantern swung again, and I heard, even over the creek, a child crying. I put my heels down and rode to the bank. She was standing at the horses' heads, holding their bridles with both hands, speaking to them low and steady. Soaked through, dressed dark with rain, hair loose from its pins, mud to her ankles. Behind her on the wagon seat, 2 small shapes huddled under a canvas, and at the bank's edge, a boy, of maybe 9, stood with his boots half in the water, looking at the crossing like he was calculating whether he could swim it. I did not give him the chance to decide. "Get back from that bank," I said. The boy stepped back. The woman turned. She did not flinch. Surprised me. Most people flinch a little when I come at them out of the dark. "The crossing's gone," she said, matter of fact, like she was telling me the time. "I can see that. We need to get across. My husband's brother is in Harlan. He is expecting us. Nobody's crossing Redstone tonight," I said. "Not in 3 days the way it's running." She looked at the water a moment. Then she looked up at me. Eyes were steady, and there was no pleading in them, which I noticed. Particularly because most eyes in that situation would have been full of it. "Is there shelter nearby?" she asked. I could have pointed her to the line shack half a mile east. It leaked, and there was no firewood laid. It was shelter of a sort, and I could have left her to it, and ridden back up the hill and gone on with my life. That is what the old Cal Drennan would have done. What I actually did was look at the boy's boots, soaked, thin-soled, the left one splitting at the seam. And hear Ruth's voice once in my head as clearly as I'd heard anything in 4 years. "You are going to help that woman, Calvin Drennan." "My place is up on the hill," I said. "You can put the horses in my barn and sleep dry tonight." "One night," she said immediately. Not a question. She was setting terms with a man she had never met in the rain at a flooded crossing with 3 children. I almost smiled. I did not. "One night," I agreed. "Her name was Nora Callum. Her husband Thomas had died of a fever the previous spring, leaving her a leased plot that the landlord reclaimed inside of 60 days, a wagon, a team, and those 3 children, the boy, whose name was Eli, 2 girls, May and little Clara, who was 4, and had fallen asleep against her sister's shoulder, somewhere along the road, and slept through the whole of the crossing crisis and the ride up to my house." Nora told me this in pieces on the way up the hill, without self-pity, the way you state facts that have already been reckoned with. I put them in Ruth's kitchen because it was the warmest room. I built the fire up and found dry blankets and did not say much, because I did not know what to say to a house full of people. It had been a long time since my house had been full of anything. Eli ate 3 bowls of the bean soup I had left on the back of the stove. May ate 2. Clara woke up long enough to eat half of one and fall back asleep in the chair by the fire. Nora ate last after the children, and not until I told her the pot was going to go to the dogs if she did not take some. "Thank you," she said. She meant it, and she was done with it. No lingering in the gratitude. That was Nora Callum to the bone. The creek ran 3 days. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking I invited them to stay. I want to be honest with you. I did not. I told myself each morning that the water would drop by evening, and each evening I looked at it, and went back to the house and did not say a word about it, one way or the other. And Nora did not press me. She found the broom the first morning and had the kitchen swept before I came in for coffee. She found the mending the second morning. A pile of it I had been ignoring since Ruth died. Shirts with missing buttons, a vest with a torn pocket, and had it half done by noon. She did not ask permission. She did not make a ceremony of it. She simply looked at what needed doing and did it. In the same way she had stood at that flooded crossing and assessed the situation and spoken plainly. Eli followed me to the barn on the second morning without being asked. He was quiet in the way that boys are quiet when they are paying close attention. And he learned where things went after being shown once. He never touched anything that wasn't his business. In the afternoon, I found him splitting kindling with the small hatchet, working through the pile with the patient, steady rhythm of a boy who has been doing his share since young. I did not speak to him much, but I watched him. And on the second evening, I went to the tack room and found a pair of old boots of mine that I had worn at 16. They were worn themselves, whole, and left them by the back door without a word. He wore them the third morning. He did not thank me for them. He just put them on and went to the barn. And I decided I liked him considerably. The water dropped on the third afternoon. I stood on the bank and looked at the crossing, and it was passable just. I went back to the house, and Nora was at the table, darning a sock, and the two girls were on the floor with a set of carved wooden horses I had brought down from the loft. Ruth's from when she was small, packed away for children we never had. I stood in the doorway a minute before Nora looked up. "It's down," I said. "All right." She set the darning aside and started to rise. "You could go in the morning," I said. "The footing's still soft. Better to let it firm up overnight." She looked at me. She was not fooled. She knew I knew the crossing was passable, and she knew I was manufacturing a reason, and she was the kind of woman who would not pretend otherwise. But she sat back down. "All right," she said again. We ate supper. All five of us, at a table that had had only me at it for 4 years. Clara sat on 2 stacked books to reach her bowl. May and Eli argued about something small and settled it between themselves. Nora poured my coffee without being asked, and I drank it, and the fire popped, and the horses moved in the barn, and the house sounded the way it had not sounded in a long time. After the children were down, Nora came back to the kitchen and stood at the window looking out at the dark hill. "What is in Harlan?" I asked. "My husband's brother. He offered us a room." "One room?" A pause. "One room." I turned my hat in my hands, a habit I have when I am working up to something I know I should say and am afraid to say. "I need a cook," I said, "and someone who can keep a house, and Eli could work. I would pay him a fair wage." "Pay you a fair wage." I stopped and started again. "It would not be charity. I am not offering charity." She turned from the window. Her face was still and careful, and I could not read it, which frightened me more than I expected. "No," she said at last. "It would not be charity. I can see that." She agreed to a month's trial. A month became the winter. The winter became the rest of our lives, though I did not know that then and would not have said it aloud if I had. What I will say now, looking back from where I sit, old and slower, full of a gratitude I did not earn, is this: the county had its opinion of Nora Callum. A widow with no land, no people, 3 children, and no prospects. They had her filed away, underfinished and forgotten before she was 30 years old. And then one September a creek rose and took out the only crossing and sent her up a hill to a closed door, and the closed door opened. Eli is running the South Range now. May married a good man in the valley. Clara still climbs onto the fence rail to watch the horses the way she did at 4 years old, and she is 22. And Nora, who never begged, never broke, never stopped looking at what needed doing and doing it. She is sitting in Ruth's kitchen as I write this, in the chair by the window, reading in the late afternoon light. The crossing has been rebuilt twice since that night. Solid stone now. It will outlast both of us. I think sometimes about the version of that night where I do not ride down the hill, where I turn back at the fence line and let the lantern swing. I think about it, and then I stop thinking about it, because some things are too large and too good to imagine undone. I rode down the hill, that is all I did, and the rest of it, the home, the noise, the life in these rooms, came up the hill to meet me.